It's the Underpowered Hour. On this week's show, Paul Smith has a tiny new Defender. You might have an opportunity to buy a Range Rover, duck boards, 3D scanning, and a whole lot of new nuts. And now, here's the show. Welcome to the Underpowered Hour. I'm Steve Barris, mild-mannered television executive by day and Land Rover collector by night. You can find out more about our cars and what we're working on at thebarriscollection.com or follow us on Instagram at thebarriscollection. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend, Ike Goss.
Thank you to everyone joining us today. I'm the outright purchase to Steven's pre-order. I'm the instant regret of podcasting, Ike Goss. I own and operate Pangolin 4x4 in Springfield, Oregon, where we live and breathe Land Rovers. Check us out online on Facebook, Instagram at Pangolin 4x4. Let's get started.
All right, Ike. Well, here is the news for this week. So first off, I know you're a big fan of Defenders with every different body panel a different color, and so is artist and Land Rover lover Paul Smith. Now, if you couldn't afford the Paul Smith Defender, if you don't remember that classic Defender 90 that Paul Smith, the artist, did, it was a while ago now. I don't exactly remember when, but he famously painted a Land Rover Defender, a bunch of different colors. And it was really, really cool. At one point, I did have an option to buy that car for many hundreds of thousands of pounds. So, did I really have an option to buy it? But anyways, you can now be the proud owner of your own Paul Smith Defender 90 1/18th scale diecast model. You can order it from the Paul Smith website.
Are you going to get one?
Oh, I think I am going to get one. Yeah, I am a really big fan of that car. I don't know why. I think it's because it has fluorescent yellow hinges, and I have kind of always wanted a Defender where you take all the galvanizing and make it fluorescent yellow, just as because I dislike painted galvanizing so much. I feel like you might as well take it to the absolute extreme. If you're going to paint it, why not make it obnoxious? I do like the car, though. It's a really neat, I've seen it up close. It was at the British Motor Museum at some point when I was there in the past. And it's a neat car. I mean, it's just a Puma Defender painted all kinds of different colors. But yeah, it's a neat little car. Yeah.
It's kind of asymmetrical, if I remember correctly.
It is.
And most of the tones are sort of more subdued, darker tones, there's a gray and a blue and a red, and they're all a little darker, and then it's got these glowing door hinges and cappings and accents and so forth.
That's correct. Yeah. And they almost they're almost Land Rover colors, but not quite. They're sort of a variety of different, the hood's kind of like a brown color and stuff. But yeah, for $235, you too can own this. It was 2015. That's when they did the car. You too can own this little Paul Smith model. So yeah, I have plenty of little Land Rover models, as I know you do. It's might be worth getting it. It's pretty cool. And you can order it now. Just go to Paul Smith's website, which is surprisingly paulsmith.com. And you can order it up, get yourself one. It comes in a really cool little box. It comes with a little pre-numbered special edition card. Yeah, I just kind of think they're cool. If you're a collector of Land Rover ephemera of that kind, you like little model cars, it's a pretty neat one to have. It's got a little detailed engine you can lift up and see its little TDCI motor in there, and you can open the doors and the back door and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of neat. So,
man, you're a dork.
Oh, yeah. I love it. I love it so much. I'm gonna put my little action figures in there and drive it around. It's going to be great. It's going to be really good. It's going to be really good. Speaking of dorks, apparently Land Rover has added a whole new category to how you can experience the Range Rover ownership journey, let's say. We're all familiar with pre-ordering a Land Rover. Traditionally, for over the history of Land Rovers, you've gone into the dealership and you've ordered a Land Rover. Only recently have car, dealerships, period, been something where you've gone onto a lot and bought a car. Previously, really, it was only sort of in the 1980s where car companies started, having dealers that would stock cars where you could just go on a Sunday and pick up a car. Normally, you would go and order a car. But Land Rover has they've moved that to a whole new level with this new generation of Range Rover.
Yeah, if you go on the JLR website right now and click on the Range Rover link, it will inform you that you can apply to join the wait list for an opportunity to be among the first to
Mhm.
place a pre-order for the new electric Range Rover.
Right.
So
So
I don't know
essentially
how many layers of of
you're
pre-order that is.
you're pre-ordering the pre-order for a pre-order, essentially.
I
Some
guess, but there's an
Inception
opportunity in there,
level
so
shit
there might
going
be an
on there,
element of
yeah.
chance in there as well.
Right, you may or may not
It's true.
be able to potentially pre-order a possible new electric Range Rover.
No, a pre-order
A
for a
pre-order
Range Rover.
for a possible Range Rover electric.
Yes.
Wow.
I wonder what
Yeah.
they charge for a pre-order for a
I
pre-order
don't know. Yeah,
or
I'm
a
not sure.
chance at a pre-order.
They're crowdfunding this new Range Rover. It's amazing. Yeah. It's like
It's
it's
on
like a
yeah, you can
Kickstarter.
go to kickstarter.com and, get on the wait list.
It
You
is
know
really, yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I'm sure they're not making the first round of electric Range Rovers in very high numbers. New cars like that are always tough, but it is true. These, car manufacturers now, it used to be that, okay, you'd put in your order, you'd get one of these things. But now it's like, look at the Cybertruck. It's like you put in your order and maybe, 3 to 5 years and you might get a car. It's
yeah,
sort of a
some
bit of a
people on the
different
wait
world.
list for those, I think, are gonna be, like, 7 years out from their
Yeah,
pre-order, if
potentially.
that.
Yeah. If that, that's right.
A high school classmate of mine is notorious on the internet because he created a Kickstarter for a product and raised almost the highest amount that any Kickstarter
Mm,
has raised, at least
yeah,
to that date, and
right.
then to never produce the product.
Oh.
So he can't be on the internet anymore.
No, yeah, no, he's,
No one knows his whereabouts. He is hated. I think it was like a slap bracelet, but it was a watch too. So it was like a flexible
right,
screen sort of thing.
right,
And people were like, "Oh, that's really cool. I think I'll send a few $100 for one of those."
right.
And
Yeah.
he raised like 9 million bucks or something crazy and never
Never
made
actually did
any
it.
watches.
Any watches, yeah.
And then he was
Mm.
like, "Oh yeah, I didn't actually know how to make those and I spent all the money on researching it and apparently it can't be done."
Oops.
I'm not saying that's what Land Rover's doing. I'm not saying
Right.
that at all.
No, I think they probably can make an electric Range Rover,
Well,
but
it's
yeah,
interesting because, there was some concern that the Range Rover was gonna come out, the electric Range Rover, and it would be based on a body style that was, at this point, a few years old. Because we
that's
went to
right.
the unveiling of the quote, unquote, "new Range
That's right.
Rover," and that was in what, 2021? Late
That's right.
2021? Almost
That's correct.
22? Like
Yeah.
November or something of 2021? So, I think the updated Range Rover is slated to coincide with the release of the new
Right.
electric Range Rover so that they
That's
will
right.
come out simultaneously, new body style, new electric Range Rover. That's my understanding. There are
Yeah.
some renderings on Auto Evolution. Have you seen those
Ooh.
renderings?
Oh, I haven't, no.
So basically they've taken like sort of the press photos and what they know about the project and sort of
Right.
made some renderings of the new Range Rover.
Mhm.
Their hypothetical concept, no headlights.
No headlights at
Essentially,
all?
essentially, yeah. It's like a
Whoa.
little ribbon. It's like a little ribbon. So
Hmm.
it really changes the look of the thing. It's a lot more monolithic with no headlights.
Very squinty, very squinty.
It's squinty, very
Yeah,
squinty.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Like Jerry McGovern himself, very, very squinty.
So the Defender, the eye is closing, and the
Yes.
Range Rover, the eye is just
Completely
closed,
closed. Completely
completely
closed.
closed.
Completely
Yeah,
closed. Well, that's interesting. I mean,
yeah.
I'm interested in seeing an electric Range Rover. Apparently, it's gonna be very nice. The all-electric Rolls-Royce I had an, opportunity to see not that long ago, and, it's pretty incredible. It is completely silent inside, not outside. It has to make, like, a little noise, right? But
Okay.
inside, it is completely silent, like, eerily silent. That was
Are you
their
sure it's
whole
on?
goal.
Are you
You
sure
don't
it's on?
know. You have no idea. You have no idea that it's on or off, that you're alive or dead. You just like when you're in there, it's like a deprivation chamber inside that thing. It's
It's
really
just
interesting.
a
Uh,
saltwater tank on wheels.
yeah, It's exactly right. Yeah, you're just like, you don't know what's going on, you don't know where you are, it's very disconcerting, but it is a yeah, it's a beautiful car, obviously, but it is humongous. It's like a condominium complex on wheels. It's just
Wow.
giant. Yeah, but I wonder if Range Rover is gonna go that way or if they're gonna go like the Tesla performance sort of direction. I'm not sure if they're gonna wait for the Sport to go like, into plaid high performance mode, or if they're gonna have that in the regular full fat Range Rover. I don't know. Yet to be seen. Well, we're gonna have to get onto the opportunity list to get onto the waiting list to get onto the. Yeah, I don't know.
You're
We'll have to
never
see.
gonna make the cut. You're
There's
never
no
gonna
way.
make the cut.
There's no way.
There's
We're
an
gonna have.
interview. Apparently, there's an interview.
There's an interview. There's no way I'm making that interview. Yeah, there's no way. Well, speaking of the interview, speaking of opportunities, there is also an opportunity for those very elite few who are interested or who are worthy to go and experience the new Defender Octa. Apparently,
Ooh.
there will be a few, I don't know, Octa experiences around the world where you'll be able to go and Octa it up in, I assume, camouflaged or whatever versions of this new Defender. You're going to have to wait until you get your invite in order to go to this. So I'm not exactly sure what criteria one will have to meet in order to do this, but I imagine Kurt Russell will show up at your house and invite you personally to
For one
drive the
last
new
mission.
Octa. One last mission. This is
One
it.
last mission.
You got to go. You got to drive the Octa. He's going to convince you to do it for your country. And yeah, then you got to do it. You got to go drift the Octa around some, fjord in Sweden or something. I don't know. But yeah, apparently around the world in select locations for those who are deemed worthy of Octa ownership, there will be an opportunity to be invited, and then I imagine then an obligation to buy one. You will not be invited unless there is a really good chance you're going to buy one.
It's like a
And I think
Squid Game, and at the
yes,
end, you get the opportunity to buy
you
the Octa.
exactly. That's exactly right. Yes, exactly right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. The rest of you will not be sent home. You'll have to figure it
Nope.
out for yourself. So, yeah,
Yep.
it should be interesting. You gotta sort of fend for yourself out there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm interested in seeing both of these cars. Land Rover is not interested in showing them to anyone. So unless you meet a very specific criteria. So I guess that's the way they're going to do it now. Just a
Yeah, you
very
have to provide your bank details before they'll allow you to buy
that's
one.
right. That's exactly right. But hey, it's just the way it's going to go. That's the only way to get a more special edition than the special editions they're creating now is by making special editions of the people that are buying them. That's the only way
Mm.
to make it a more elite setup for that. So, hey, there you go.
Pretty soon, they're only gonna sell one Land Rover a year.
Yes, it's
That's it.
exactly right. The
Just one.
most elite, most specialized edition, one a year. It's going to be amazing. Can't wait.
$4 billion, they just have
Yep.
to sell one.
Just to sell the one. That's all.
Yep.
Much easier that way. Speaking of making Land Rovers, they are now, for the first time ever, controversially, making His Majesty's Range Rover outside of the United Kingdom. Not
Sure.
just outside of the United Kingdom, but outside of Solihull itself. It's a little known fact that the Range Rover has never really been in any, meaningful way assembled outside of Solihull itself. It's now being assembled at the mothership at Tata in India for
Yeah.
the Indian market,
It's
which is
true.
interesting.
Obviously, a lot of manufacturers do this to avoid duties and taxes. They create a local assembly plant, and that's what is happening here in India. They're going to
Yeah,
produce the Range Rover and Range Rover Sport for the Indian market. So that's
that
not
makes
to say
sense.
that all Range Rovers and Range Rover Sports are going to be made there in India. That's not true. They're still going to be made
Yeah.
in the UK for the most part, but the Indian versions are going to be made there. It's going to be locally
Very cool.
built. So, what do you think? Are they going to be higher quality, the Indian counterpart, than the UK Solihull
That's a really
sourced
good
unit?
question. I think it's
Yeah,
fair
what
to
do you
say
think?
that they're going to have imitation leather for sure for the
You
Indian
think?
market. It's not going to be
I don't
cowhide.
know. I don't know.
It definitely won't be cowhide. I don't know. It's tough to say, right? I mean, Tata makes their higher end cars are apparently quite nice, and the factories that they have there are super modern. I it's conceivable to think that they're gonna make a very high-end Range Rover. I mean, anytime
That's
they've ever made Land Rovers out of market, they've always been a little different too, which is
yeah.
interesting, right? Like Santanas and things like that. So I'm interested to know, like, if the Indian market Range Rover is, like, just a little bit different. That would be kind of interesting to see.
I'd like to see that comparison. UK Range Rover versus Indian Range Rover. I'd watch that YouTube video. I would.
Yeah.
I would.
I think it'd be really cool to see if there is any difference, right? Like, is there a yeah, is it like, I don't know, what would it have? A supersized curry hook or something? Like, what's the, what does the Indian market need that the UK market doesn't have? Like, I don't know. I don't know, but it'd be cool.
It's it's a slippery slope. I don't know.
It's a
I don't know
slippery
what to say
slope.
about that.
It's a slippery slope, but I'd like to check it out. I think well,
Well,
definitely. I do think for the Indian market, and no joke, like you can't get leather seats in India. There is no leather seats in India. They are an imitation leather seat in India. So it's
well, speaking of
yeah.
Land
Speaking of
Rovers
leather seats,
speaking of Land Rovers that are
yeah,
made outside the UK, you may be
yeah,
surprised to hear that some components in your JLR vehicle
yeah.
are potentially made in China. Well, you're probably
Made
not surprised to
made
hear that,
made
but
way outside of the UK. Yeah.
you may also be surprised to hear that they are made with forced labor.
That's exactly right. So,
So according to
seat manufacturer Lear, which is also the people that make the Lear jet. It is the same company that
same
make the
company.
seats. Yeah, the same people that make the seats for the Range Rover and the Discovery. I'm not sure about the Defender, but certainly the Range Rover and the Discovery are Lear, the same people who make the jet. Apparently, have been outsourcing some of that component labor to China.
Yes. So CBS News is reporting that JLR supplier Lear Corporation has been sourcing automotive components from Chinese manufacturer JWD, who was sanctioned in 2021 for using forced labor. And unfortunately, this is all after the automaker had been informed that there were problematic practices in their supply chain. So it doesn't look super good. That's a
That's not
bad
great.
look.
It's not a great look.
It's a bad look.
I mean, those
So,
seats are really comfy, but, at
really
what cost?
comfy. At
At
what
what
cost?
cost?
They're actually made
Of
of
forced
people.
labor. Yeah,
Yep, they're
of
made
course.
of people.
They are leather free, but,
Are
you know.
leather
Yeah,
free, but,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, yeah, Lear, I mean, you when you're making super high-end airplanes, I mean, I think you
Yeah,
think slave labor, that's an option. You can option the plane to have more or less slave labor, because that's when you're a Jeff Bezos or somebody, that's just par for the course. That's part of the game. But I think when you're equipping, a modestly priced Range Rover Sport, you don't expect a lot of slave labor in there. So, yeah, it's not
no,
a great feeling. Not a
you
great
know,
feeling.
I think there's this assumption that if you buy a higher end product, the reason that it costs more, one of the reasons it costs more is because you are paying for, the best practices, the
That's right.
best
That's right.
labor and skill that
Yep.
that money buys,
Yeah.
that costs. But apparently that's just going into the margins.
Apparently not. Yeah, apparently you're just paying for slave Chinese labor, forced labor camps to make those high-end Lear seats. So unfortunately, yeah, that's too bad because those are nice seats. Nice seats.
I think JLR can definitely do better in this case, and
I think so. So
hopefully they get their shit together because
well, hey,
that's
if
bad luck.
if you're, if you want to protest your slave labor seats, why not head over to Knightsbridge Off Road, get some seat covers. They make some really nice seat covers for the Range Rover. You just cover up that sin with real
Oh
nice.
no,
They make some great seat covers, tactical seat
oh
covers,
no.
standard seat covers. I love them. He does a great job. Does a really nice job on those seat covers. So, anyway, I was introduced to something by my good friend Ike Goss this weekend as we were up at the old Pacific Northwest Anarch rally gathering, and we were talking about 80-inch Land Rovers as we find ourselves doing. And of course, those who are longtime listeners to the show know that my 80-inch Land Rover came from a vineyard in Northern California, and vineyards are famous for having a wood decking in the back of the Land Rover so that the wine barrels that get thrown in and out of the back don't just destroy the floor, because of course it's an aluminum floor, and wine barrels are very hard and very
Heavy.
heavy. Yeah, and they just punch right through that aluminum floor. So the vintners would put a wooden decking in the back, and I've been thinking about reproducing something. And Ike brought up this product that is, I guess, very common in Volkswagen things, which I had never heard of before.
Kubelwagens, technically. You know, I think originally they were used to sort of keep mud and debris from accumulating on the hard surfaces, floors, etc. And so they needed something that would kind of allow that to sluice through, if you will. And they kind of work in the same way that the rubber link mats work in the
Yeah,
Land Rover, but they're made of wood and they're
yeah,
called duck boards.
yeah.
And I think that they're kind of neat. And I suggested to Steven that wouldn't it be cool to have some of those for your Land Rover?
Yeah, and so I've been doing some research on them, and as it turns out, these duck boards are what they'll sometimes call, the winery industry will call slat boards, but these often teak or some kind of hardwood, slatted, sort of mats are actually super common. They actually still use them today. Now they're made of aluminum, but they're very common in that industry to keep the beds of even modern F-150s and flatbed trucks in the wine industry from getting destroyed. So yeah, we're definitely gonna have to make them. But I had no idea. They're really interesting. And although Land Rovers, like you said, like are very much link mat, that's sort of the traditional floor mat. If you have a series car and you really want a very traditional looking floor mat, and they are very effective. They work great. But these are really, really cool looking. If you get a nice, you know, set of teak sort of duck boards that are nicely stained or something, and they're not super thick. They're actually like they're quite thin, and no, not really that much thicker than a link mat, and allow for, they're cut out for the pedals, and they're cut out for any of this, linkage for the, parking brake or anything that happens to be, protruding through the floor. And yeah, all the gravel and whatever would just fall down underneath, and you'd take them out occasionally and sweep that stuff out. But they're really very sharp looking, and for something that's kind of a neat restoration, especially if you're doing sort of a, maybe a coastal sand buggy kind of restoration or something like that. Or if you do have a working Land Rover that you are throwing things in and out of the bed, and you just don't want to punch holes in it, or you don't want to scratch the crap out of your floorboards or something, they really are a pretty neat. And the way they're built, they're sort of allow drainage underneath the slats so that water kind of runs out from underneath them, so they don't trap things. Like sometimes the link mat can kind of trap moisture underneath, and you end up getting a little bit of a sogginess under there. But these things sort of don't allow that. And if they're teak, then you don't have to worry about like them rotting or anything like that, and or anything cedar or something like that that doesn't allow bugs and rot and things like that. So yeah, it's pretty cool. I had no idea that they even existed, and they're pretty neat. They're really a cool thing, and they're definitely something that like a low skill carpenter can build at home. Something you could make on a table saw in a weekend and have something perfectly serviceable. Or if you are a high end woodworker, or a high end woodworker, you can make something really quite nice. My good friend Aaron Cook here in Los Angeles is a sort of master woodworker, and he and I are going to make something quite fancy, and we're going to laser in the logo of the family winery there into the deck and stuff, and do some cool stuff.
You Yeah, these are popular for, like, outside of saunas and,
Yeah.
steam baths and that sort of thing. Like, they have the wood, kind of wooden mats outside, and I've also seen them made out of other materials. Like, apparently they make a vinyl,
Mm.
duckboard material,
Yep. Yep.
which I'm kinda curious about those as well.
Yeah, and like I said, there's aluminum now is what they use in the winemaking industry. It's not like a honeycomb. It does look like duckboard, and they kind of slot together, and it's very very strong, but it drains super well. And because it's aluminum, it doesn't rust or anything. It obviously stays
I
nice.
I think I think the original purpose was actually in trenches in World War II or maybe in
Right.
World War One, you know,
Yeah.
like to keep people's feet dry
Yep.
and out of the muck. You know, they were having
Yep.
so many problems with foot ulcers and rot
Yep.
and this sort of thing because people's feet would never dry out. So they put these duck boards in the bottom of the trenches so that the mud and water could sluice through and people would have a dry place to stand.
Yep, yep. They're really cool. And really a neat, yeah, had no idea. And it's a really classic kind of looking thing that keeps, if you have a painted floor or something in your, in your Land Rover, keeps it from getting all scratched up and stuff. So.
If you have been getting foot rot when driving your Land Rover,
Mhm,
perhaps
mhm.
the duck board is the answer.
There you go. Speaking of duck boards and dry rot, we had the opportunity this past weekend while we were all up in His Majesty's Pangolin 4x4 to do a little bit of a mix of the most modern with the least modern thing and scan some super vintage Land Rover parts and a super vintage person with the 3D part scanner. So
Mhm.
Abigail and I brought up the 3D part scanner, and we started doing some scanning of some parts so that we could get Linus a fixture for the fuel lifter for Series 2, 2A, and 3. The mechanical fuel pump in that car. He has regaled us with tales of how difficult it is to hold that particular part
Yeah.
while undoing and redoing the peening of the of the seals and things inside of the top of that. So we're going to make a fixture for that, and we scanned a sun gear for I believe that's for your Forest Rover.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then most importantly, we scanned Linus himself. We did a full Linus shoulders up bust scan, and that came out pretty fantastically, if I do say so myself. It was
Yeah. Yeah, it's looking good. I was surprised that you've already produced how many prints of that? Like at
oh
least 3 dozen prints.
oh yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah, we're just leaving them places now around town, just little Linuses everywhere. Yeah, it's
It's
it's pretty great.
quite the business card, just a
Yeah.
3D bust of Linus.
We're going to start putting some of that content out on YouTube, so look for that. Some 3D scanning stuff there. We did make a Linus Mini Cooper shift knob, which is pretty great. He fits so ergonomically, his face and upper chest area, so ergonomically into your hand. It's actually much nicer to shift than the actual mini shift knob. The mini shift knob is too small for my liking. So a nice Linus face, palm full of Linus face is really great. Gives you a really nice purchase on that lever. So that's great.
Make one of those Weebles, you
Oh
know?
yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah, so we'll have to see. We're working on productizing some Linus merchandise without his permission. So we'll see. We'll put that up on the Underpowered Hour store. But if you're interested in the 3D scanning, we're going to put a whole bunch of stuff on YouTube about that. It is pretty handy, in the case of Ike's Sun Gear for the Forest Rover. Obviously, there was only ever a few of those cars made. And so those Sun Gears aren't something you can just order from McMaster Car. And so being able to have good reference scans of those and things are a little tricky. I also have I was scanning yesterday, one of the knobs from my Firefly fire appliance, which even the other owners of the particular Firefly don't have the same lights that I do on mine. So I may have the only one of this particular thing. I mean, I'm sure they used it in other places, but God knows what it's from. And so Chris and I were scanning it so that we can reproduce it. And it's really great for stuff like that. Works really, really good for sort of getting basic geometry for parts that you have to reproduce, because in my case, I'm missing one of the four. And you're never going to order that because you don't even know where to start looking for it. And so we're going to have it recast, and, we'll remanufacture it. And so that we can have a matching set of those parts again. And it's really cool. I mean, that technology has come down in price super significantly. You can now have a full PC rig with the scanner and everything for well under $3,000 now. That even 5 years ago would have been $10,000. So, that's still a lot of money. But, if you have, a few
It's
friends,
becoming more
or
accessible. Yeah.
yeah, well accessible. So if you have a few friends, or maybe even your Land Rover club, or you have a small makerspace or something, it's definitely achievable now. So and you can make your own tiny Linus busts then if you have access to that. I finally got my boltsandnuts.com bolts index set up in the old workshop this weekend, and man, it's awesome. I really like it. It was an idea that Chris and I had that I never talked to these people about, and they stole it from us. And it's fantastic. It's a bolt index where every individual item is QR coded, and all you have to do is scan that QR code, and it automatically reorders that quantity and size and item and just delivers it to you. So you have the account set up with them, and you can just scan in a bunch of QR codes on your phone into their little website, and you just hit order, and it sends you everything that you're missing. And so no more of this like going through and, again, for a small, garage or something like that, it's not such a big deal. But if you're like Ike or myself, you go through a ton of fasteners, and it's a real hassle to go through and keep up with that inventory and where did I get that from, and oh well, we're out of that particular size, and go through and keeping mastercarring it or whatever. This is a really nice service, and we're gonna have to reach out to them and see, because they have something like called the oh, I forget what it's called, but it's something like the Boltosaurus or something, and it literally has like every fastener known to mankind. And it is the size of an entire wall of your shop.
Do
No
they
Whitworth,
have
no.
Sharedized coatings?
No, they don't have any Sharedized coatings. No.
Do they have Whitworth fasteners?
No, they have no Whitworth fasteners. No.
I don't care about it.
Yeah, I know you don't care. Yeah, they have nothing that you would like, but yeah, they've got all the standard fasteners, metric and imperial, and they have both. They have both graded hardware, non-graded hardware. They have them in a few different coatings. They have little electrical connectors. They have all kinds of really handy stuff, and it's all in this highly densified and easy to reorder sort of format. You can get them in drawers. You can get them in. I have them in the little freestanding block. We call them holes. I don't know what you call them, but the little, the gridded sort of things like you find at the Home Depot. Mm-hmm. It's great. It's really nice and fast to reorder, and that goes along with our densified, other parts and things, which we've gone through and done that ourselves, so that it tracks back to McMaster-Carr and stuff. And man, is the shop getting organized. I have a shop assistant, Aiden, here with me for the summer, who's a engineering student from the University of San Diego. We're getting through it. We're really getting some stuff done. It's amazing. So.
Wow. Also some slave labor down there at the Barrett's
Also slave
workshop.
labor. Yeah, it's great. He does get paid, but not enough for what I'm making him do. That's for sure. So, yeah, it's pretty great. It's pretty great. Having him make some seats out of skins, human skin. So it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. All right, well, it's been a slice, and we'll see you next week.
All right, looking forward to it. Take care.
The Underpowered Hour is produced by Liza Barris, Ike Goss, and me, Steve Barris. Pavel Svardov composed and performed our theme music. Consider supporting the show on Patreon, and if you already do, thank you. Your support makes the show possible. For even more, check out our Instagram or Facebook.